Let me start by saying, I didn't want to go to the damn retreat. No man wakes up one morning and thinks, you know what sounds great? Paying 5 grand to sit barefoot in a yurt and talk about his feelings with strangers while sipping oat milk. But Dana said we needed it. We're not in crisis, she said. We're just misaligned. Which, I later realized, is the kind of thing you only say when you're halfway out the door already. But back then, I bought it. Like a chump. So I booked the flights, packed my canvas pants, and drove us from the Phoenix airport up to Sedona while she hummed along to some Crystal Bowl playlist and pointed out every cactus like it was a spiritual sign. And the place? It was beautiful, I'll give her that. Nestled between red rock cliffs and overpriced galleries, the Sanctuary Alignment Ranch looked like something out of a minimalist Instagram dream. Gravel paths, hammocks, wind chimes, infinity-edge plunge pools. All of it carefully curated to make you think your problems could be solved with hot stones and eye contact. The main lodge was a converted adobe villa with woven rugs and a central hearth. The retreat staff were all sun-kissed, linen-clad, and permanently hydrated. And at the center of it all was Dr. Blake, the founder, spiritual director, and, allegedly, licensed therapist. He greeted us himself at check-in. Barefoot, strong handshake, voice like a TED Talk and jawline like a Disney prince. Welcome, he said, smiling only at Dana. You've arrived at the right time. Which should have set off every alarm in my body. But I was too busy trying to pronounce chakra alignment. The first few days were mostly fluff. Group breath work in the mornings. Guided journaling in the afternoons. Conscious couple communication after dinner, which is just a fancy way of saying, sit on a pillow and tell your partner why they annoy you without yelling. Dana was thriving. Eyes closed. Hair braided. Talking about her inner blooming. Me? I was counting the hours until the next snack break. But I played along. I really did. Because that's what you do when you're trying to fix something, right? You show up. You participate. You trust the process. And then one morning, Dana started hiking alone. Just short ones, she said, lacing up her boots. I need space to realign my energy before the intimacy workshops. Sure, I thought. Who doesn't want a little solo time in the desert? But she started going every day. Always right after the sunrise yoga. Always alone. Always coming back flushed and glowing and suspiciously silent. That's when the shift began. I noticed the journal next. She kept it close, closer than her phone, even. She scribbled in it constantly. On the porch. In the hammock. Even during meals, she'd jot things down between bites of quinoa salad like the words were burning through her fingers. Once, I asked what she was writing. She smiled, tight and vague. Just thoughts. Another time, I reached for it by mistake, thinking it was the resort's welcome binder. She snapped it back so fast you'd think I tried to grab a live wire. It's private, she said, sharp. Which, fine. Journals are supposed to be private. But Dana never used to journal. She used to watch trashy shows with me on the couch and mock the commercials. Now she was acting like a poet on a deadline. The tipping point came on the 4th night. It was just past midnight. I couldn't sleep. Too many damn gongs and herbal teas. So I got up to find my earbuds. Maybe listen to something normal for a change. On my way to the bathroom, I saw the journal sitting on the edge of the nightstand. For once, she wasn't clutching it. And look, I'm not proud of what I did next. But if you're reading this, you've probably been there. You can only take so much distance, so many vague smiles and solo hikes, before curiosity stops being rude and starts being survival. So I opened it. And that's when everything snapped into focus. It wasn't a journal. It was a love story. Page after page, written in Dana's neat, looping handwriting. Letters addressed not to herself, not to the universe, but to Blake. B, she called him. Like they had some secret shorthand. She wrote about how he saw her essence. How she felt safe in his presence. How she ached for alignment, in all ways. I flipped to the next page. I wanted to kiss you in the ravine today. I nearly did. When you touched my hand during our check-in, my whole body pulsed. Next page. You said we needed to honor the retreat's boundaries. That we should wait. But I don't know if I can. I closed the book. My pulse was in my ears. My skin felt electric. Not from heartbreak. From clarity. Because finally, I wasn't the crazy one. I wasn't imagining things. And now? Now I had the ammo. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because yelling in a cabin at 2 a.m. doesn't solve anything. No. This needed to be surgical. Elegant. Public. The kind of exposure you can't retreat your way out of. And luckily for me, the perfect stage was already set. The final night of the retreat, there would be a closing circle. A sacred gathering where each couple shares their breakthrough. A microphone, a fire pit, a captive audience, and best of all, a surprise gratitude guest joining the circle. That's what the staff had whispered at dinner. A special someone to remind us that love is a mirror. Oh, Blake, you really shouldn't have. The morning after I read her journal, I brewed the strongest cup of resort brand green tea I could find, walked to the edge of the meditation bluff, and sat there staring at the red cliffs like I was trying to decode them. What I was really doing. Replaying the lines from Dana's entries in my head. I ache for alignment in all ways. Translation: she wasn't just hiking for enlightenment. She was hiking toward a man. A barefoot, linen-wrapped, snake oil-slicked therapist who probably ended every sentence with a deep sigh and a compliment about your aura. What pissed me off the most wasn't the infidelity. It was the smugness of it. The secrecy packaged as spirituality. The gaslighting tucked neatly under the excuse of self-discovery. And the fact that she used my credit card to pay for the retreat where she cheated with the retreat leader. Now that was rich. At breakfast, she sat across from me, sipping her lemon balm detox blend, smiling like someone who just completed an excellent stretch instead of an emotional mugging. "I'm doing another solo hike today," she said, eyes clear. "I think I'm almost through something." "Oh yeah," I said, nodding. "Yeah, something's shifting. I think this trip is really working." I smiled. It's funny how easy it is to smile when you're holding a secret that will detonate in 48 hours. My first move wasn't dramatic. It was logistical. I visited the front desk and asked if the closing circle, scheduled for Saturday night, would include a gratitude share, like we'd been told. "Oh yes," the staff member beamed. "Each couple will be invited to reflect, and Dr. Blake will be facilitating." "Perfect. Can I request to go third in the order?" I asked. "I have something planned, and I don't want to follow someone who already cried." She laughed and made a note on her clipboard. Step 1, slot secured. Step 2 was riskier. I needed the journal again. Not just to read it this time, but to document it. That night, while Dana was in the communal bathhouse doing her salt scrub soak, I slipped the journal out of her canvas tote and snapped pictures of every page. Each confession, each poetic betrayal, each wishful fantasy about her and Blake realigning their pathways. I didn't read them all again. Didn't need to. The first time was enough. I wasn't after pain. I was after proof. And now, I had it in 77 JPEGs. The day before the circle, things started to hum. Blake looked particularly chipper at morning yoga. He opened with a monologue about how we carry shame in the jaw and encouraged everyone to release it through humming. Half the group buzzed like meditating bees. I just stared at him, watching the way he looked at Dana when she hummed. The extra few seconds of eye contact. The private smile. He wasn't even trying to hide it, because he thought I hadn't noticed. And Dana? She wasn't hiding either. She came back from that day's hike with leaves in her hair and a text alert on her phone from B. I saw the screen light up while it was in her lap during lunch. "Same time tomorrow," it read. She flipped it over when she noticed me looking. Too late. Tomorrow was the final day. There wouldn't be a same time. There would be one time. One final reckoning. And all I had to do was wait. That night, I prepped. I sat under the stars with my phone, reading the letters again, picking the juiciest excerpts. The ones that would hit the circle like cold water. I copied them into a notes app, labeled them Journal Reflections. I rehearsed a little, just enough to get the rhythm down. Dana's been journaling a lot this week. Pause. And we talked about being more open, so I asked if I could share some of her reflections. She agreed. Lie. She hadn't agreed. But once I started reading, no one would question it. Because in Sedona, anything said with confidence and a calm tone counts as truth. The final morning arrived. Dana wore white linen pants and a braided leather headband like she was auditioning for an herbal supplement commercial. She kissed me on the cheek during breakfast. "I feel closer to something," she said. "You have no idea," I replied, smiling. She looked confused. Then the gong rang, and everyone shuffled off to the morning circle. The agenda was light, silent meditation, intention setting, a sand mandala ceremony. Dana and Blake avoided each other's gaze most of the day, which I appreciated. No one likes a sloppy villain. After lunch, we all had 3 hours of personal reflection time before the closing event. Dana went for one last hike. Blake disappeared. I sat by the koi pond with my phone, rereading my speech. Not a single word of it was exaggerated. Not a single one needed dressing up. The truth was damning enough. And I wasn't just doing it for me. I was doing it for whoever Blake had lied to before, and whoever might be next. Especially one woman in particular. The only other person who hadn't said a single word all week. The guest who never participated, never opened up, and never once introduced herself to the group. The one with no partner beside her. Just a soft, knowing smile and a notebook. She was always watching Blake, and he never looked at her once. Almost like he didn't know she was there. And if I was right, he didn't. Because that wasn't a guest. That was the therapist's wife. The afternoon of the closing circle felt like the longest one of my life. 3 hours of personal reflection had never stretched so wide or heavy. The Sedona sun was doing its best impression of a heat lamp, and the red cliffs surrounding the ranch looked less like healing monoliths and more like quiet judges waiting for testimony. Dana returned from her hike with a refreshed soul and dirt under her fingernails. She didn't say much, just glided around the villa with the air of a woman who believed she had everything under control. That was the part that kept catching me. She didn't just cheat. She did it from a place of serene certainty, as if her betrayal was a favor to me, as if the affair were some cosmic download she had no choice but to receive. That's what this retreat had done. It hadn't made her more open. It had made her more smug, more slippery. Like if she wrapped her decisions in the right crystals and jargon, they were no longer up for moral scrutiny. But all that smugness would come in handy, because the bigger they puff themselves up, the better they explode. At 6 p.m. sharp, the dinner bell rang. Final night. Vegan feast. Last chance to savor quinoa under the stars before heading back to real life. The tables were set in a wide semicircle under string lights, with handwritten name cards placed thoughtfully beside wildflower centerpieces. Everything smelled like rosemary and closure. I clocked the seating chart immediately. Dana and I were 2 chairs down from Blake. Direct line of sight. And 4 seats to Blake's right. Her. The quiet woman. Same flowy shawl, same centered silence. She wasn't dressed up. No makeup. No jewelry. Just a neutral-toned wrap dress and sandals. She looked like a guest. But I'd known for days that she wasn't. Not really. I noticed something else now, too. Something I'd missed. Every time Blake scanned the group, his eyes skipped past her. Not avoidance. Not shame. He literally didn't register her. She was invisible to him. But she was watching everything. And when I caught her eye across the table, she smiled. Not a big grin. Not a "we're in this together" smirk. Just a small, patient smile. Like someone sitting front row with a script and a timer. Like someone who'd waited a very long time for this night. The meal passed in slow motion. Blake gave a toast about courageous transformation. Dana leaned into me like nothing was wrong. I drank sparkling water and kept one hand on my phone under the table. The screen glowed softly. 77 journal entries. Labeled, ready. Everyone was handed a candle for the revelation ceremony. At 7:30, we moved from the tables to the fire pit. The string lights flickered on. Wind chimes whispered. A little speaker played soft ambient music that sounded like wind in a canyon. And then Blake stepped forward, barefoot as always, to begin the closing circle. "We gather tonight in gratitude," he said, voice low, smooth, unhurried. "To celebrate our evolution." He thanked the kitchen staff. He thanked the yoga instructors. And then he thanked the brave souls who came here seeking clarity and connection. "Tonight," he said, "we'll share what we've learned. Not just with our partners, but with the community. Our reflections are gifts." He gestured toward a small table beside the fire. On it, a conch shell sat beside a talking stick. "You may speak when you hold the stick. Pass it to the left. No interruptions. No judgment. Only presence." Someone muttered, "Beautiful." A few people nodded. "Let's begin," Blake said. The first couple went. Some retirees from Vermont. They'd realized they weren't listening to each other enough. Sweet. Heartfelt. The next couple shared how they reconnected over sound bathing. The stick passed to me. I was third, just like I planned. I stood up. Dana's hand touched my arm as if to steady me. She thought I was nervous. Oh, honey, not even close. I took a deep breath and smiled at the circle. "Dana and I came here feeling out of sync," I began. "And we've learned a lot." She beamed. "But what I've really learned, what I want to share, is about vulnerability." Nods. Blake smiled like a proud guru. And transparency. More nods. I asked Dana if I could share something personal tonight. Some of her journaling. Her smile faltered. Slightly. But I think it's important. I think it might help others. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Opened the notes. Scrolled to entry number 17. Here's one, I said, reading aloud. When you touched my hand during our check-in, I felt a surge down to my bones. I don't know if it was spiritual or primal, but I can't stop replaying it. Silence. I looked up. Dana's mouth parted slightly. Not a smile. Not yet fear. Just confusion. I continued. I wanted to kiss you in the ravine. You looked like something carved from the canyon. I thought about undressing you with my mind. A woman across the circle audibly gasped. Blake's posture shifted. Dana's hand twitched in her lap. I tapped my screen. Entry number 29. You said we should wait until the retreat ends. That we have to honor the space. But my body doesn't want to wait anymore. I want you now, in the silence, under the stars. Blake stood up. Okay, maybe this. I held up a hand. Calmly. I'm not done. Dana spoke. Michael, what are you? I turned to her. You said I could share. I never. Transparency, I said, smiling. Then I turned to the group. Just one more. I scrolled to entry number 44. When I'm with him, I feel awake. When I'm with Michael, I feel sorry. Like I'm pretending. I looked up. The fire crackled. No one breathed. And then, the quiet woman stood. She walked to the center of the circle and said 4 words. Words that turned the retreat from a memory into a legend. I'm Dr. Blake's wife. For a solid 5 seconds, the only sound in the fire circle was the wind brushing through the wind chimes. Then a single fork dropped from the nearby dinner table. Clink. I didn't even turn to Dana. I kept my eyes on Blake's wife. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't even moved dramatically. She stood still, hands loose at her sides, no emotion on her face, like someone giving a weather report. I'm Dr. Blake's wife, she repeated. Then she looked directly at her husband. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Blake froze. I could see it in his throat first. That tight swallow. Then his eyes flicked across the group like he was searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. Dana, to her credit, or her stupidity, still looked confused. She leaned forward and whispered, Michael, what is going on? I said nothing. Let her catch up. Let her piece it together in real time, the same way I had while holding her stupid leather-bound confession book in my hands. The fire cracked again, louder this time, like it was feeding off the tension. Blake finally spoke. Maria, what are you doing here? Maria? The quiet woman had a name now. Maria didn't flinch. I've been here since day one, she said. Watching, listening, waiting. Her voice was calm, not vengeful, not dramatic, just precise. Because I knew, she continued. I knew you were crossing boundaries again. I just needed confirmation. She stepped toward the fire and looked around the circle. How many of you knew Blake was married? No one raised their hand. A few people glanced at each other. A couple shook their heads. One man's jaw actually dropped. Blake tried to step forward, hands raised. Maria, please. She cut him off. No, don't try to smooth it over. Don't gaslight this group the way you gaslit me for years. Don't pretend you're doing the work when all you're doing is performing. Healing isn't hiding, and therapy isn't seduction. Now Dana understood. I saw it hit her like a slow-moving bullet. Her head whipped toward Blake, then back to Maria, then to me. You knew? She hissed, still whispering, still in denial. Of course I knew, I said. I've known since day 2. You read my journal? I raised an eyebrow. You left it on the patio table, unlocked, during full moon circle. Maria smirked at that. Dana blinked fast. Why would you do this here? In front of everyone. I looked around the circle, gesturing slightly. Because this, I said, pointing to the group, the fire, the candles, is where you wanted to bare your soul. I'm just helping you follow through. The couples around us sat motionless. It was no longer a retreat. It was a trial. Blake tried again. I admit I crossed a line. But this isn't the place. No, Maria said. It's exactly the place. You built this place to hide. You designed the structure so no one would ever question you. You created the language, the rules, the rituals, all of it to control the story. She turned to the group. Do you want to know how Blake and I met? Nobody answered, but the silence was full of yes. I was his patient, she said. Years ago, I came to him for trauma counseling. And within 3 months, he asked me to move in. Gasps now. Not dramatic ones. Just shocked little exhales from people who'd paid thousands to hear Blake's voice every day for a week. Dana looked like she'd swallowed vinegar. I wasn't sure if she was more upset about the exposure, the infidelity, or the fact that she wasn't the first. Maybe all three. Maria continued. I let it go, she said. We got married. We built this place together. I did the books, the marketing, the logistics, everything behind the curtain. She looked at Blake again. And you kept doing this. Over and over. Until I stopped looking away. Blake finally dropped his hands. He wasn't talking anymore. He wasn't even defending himself. Because there was no defense. The spell was broken. The guru was just another man who liked the sound of his own voice and the look of new women calling him wise. The fire crackled louder now, throwing shadows against everyone's faces. No one moved. So I stood up again. I think we've shared enough, I said. Unless Dana wants to read any of her entries out loud. Dana stood up too. Fast. Michael, don't. Why not? You were fine with it when it was anonymous. Isn't this emotional transparency? Her eyes burned. Then, suddenly, she grabbed her journal from her tote and flung it into the fire. It burst open midair, pages catching flame instantly, the spine curling, words vanishing into smoke. Gasps again. She turned and stormed out of the circle, sandals slapping the dirt. Blake didn't follow her. Maria didn't move. I sat down. The stick was still in my hand. I placed it gently on the bench beside me. Blake finally turned to the group and opened his mouth. But before he could speak, Maria stepped into his line of sight and said one final sentence. I'm dissolving the retreat company. Effective immediately. Then she turned and walked away. Back straight. Shawl fluttering. And the guru? He sat down. Quietly. No one clapped. No one cried. They just watched the flames eat what was left of the journal and of the illusion. The next morning, the retreat grounds felt like a ghost town. Gone were the morning chants. No soft flute music drifted across the meditation garden. No retreat staff arranging lavender water by the yoga dome. The place was stripped of its illusion, like someone had yanked a canvas backdrop off a film set and revealed the plywood and wires underneath. I stood by the villa's sliding glass doors with a mug of burnt hotel-grade coffee, watching as a few other couples wheeled suitcases toward the lot. The air was crisp but thin, like it didn't know whether to carry peace or leftover smoke from last night's journal bonfire. Dana had locked herself in the bathroom. Not figuratively. She literally used the latch. She hadn't said a word since the fire circle. But I heard her crying around 3 a.m. briefly. Then silence. Just like always. When she couldn't spin the narrative, she went mute and waited for me to come around. Not this time. At breakfast, there were only 2 people in the dining yurt. The woman who'd been crying over her wine 2 nights ago, and a guy in his 30s who spent the entire week posting filtered sunsets and talking about Bitcoin vibrations. Neither spoke to me. Neither had the energy. Maria was gone. I asked the kitchen staff. They just shrugged. I suspected she left before sunrise. A woman like that didn't wait around to sweep ashes. She'd already done her part. Blake, on the other hand, was still here. He sat alone on one of the stone benches near the garden path. No clipboard. No linen shirt. Just a hoodie and jeans. Off-brand. Almost unsettling. When he saw me walking past, he stood. Michael. I didn't stop walking. Michael, can I? Nope. I just want to talk. You've done enough of that, Doc. He exhaled through his nose. You know what hurts the most? I stopped then. Turned. No, I said. But I bet you're about to tell me. He looked genuinely tired. I love this work. I really did. It saved me once. I never meant to. To what? Sleep with clients? Manipulate my wife? Or use your platform to create a spiritual Tinder profile? His jaw flexed. You think I'm a monster? I think you're a fraud, I said. And worse than that, I think you're boring. He blinked. That hit. That always hits men like him. The ones who build entire brands around being fascinating. Dana's not innocent either, he said, bitter now. She came onto me. She knew what she was doing. Of course she did, I said. You don't think I know that? He looked surprised. I've known for months that something was off. I continued. This retreat just gave me proof. She didn't come here to heal. She came here to feel seen. And you? Well, you've got a mirror for a face. Whatever people want, you reflect it. It's how you get them to undress. He didn't respond. Just sat down again. Back in his shame spiral, probably rehearsing some podcast-length apology for Instagram. Let him. I walked away. By noon, I'd packed our things. 2 suitcases. 1 carry-on. Dana emerged from the bathroom as I zipped the last bag shut. Her face was pale and raw. No makeup. Puffy eyes. The look of someone who finally realized the narrative wouldn't reset. "Are you leaving me?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her for a long second. "Already did." She blinked. "Michael, I'm not doing the post-mortem. I'm not doing the crying and forgiving and blaming. You wanted emotional transparency. That was it. Out there by the fire." She shook her head, looking stunned. "I was confused," she said. "I was lonely." "No," I said. "You were bored." Silence. I picked up my suitcase. She followed me to the door. "Please don't tell everyone," she said. "Not like that. Not with her watching." I turned back to her. "You handed me the journal," I said. "You just didn't expect me to read it aloud." She swallowed hard. "You embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself." I just turned the lights on. She didn't respond. I stepped outside. The wind was still warm, but the spell of Sedona was broken. The rocks didn't glow anymore. The air didn't hum. It was just another overpriced resort built on stolen land and New Age lies. But I'd gotten what I came for. Not peace. Not clarity. Freedom. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, I was back home in Chicago, sitting in the corner booth of a diner that hadn't changed since 1986. Vinyl seats. Yellowed coffee mugs. Waitresses who called you Han. The kind of place where you could disappear in plain sight, and nobody asked how your mindfulness retreat went. Not that anyone here knew I'd gone. I was halfway through a short stack and halfway through deleting every photo I'd taken in Sedona when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity is a hard habit to kick. I picked up. "Michael." A woman's voice. Smooth, calm. Precise. Speaking. "It's Maria." Of course it was. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," I said. "How'd you get my number?" "I manage the retreat's financial systems," she said. "I handle everything, including intake forms." I sipped my coffee. "Right," I said. "You said you built it." "I did." Pause. "So what happens now?" I asked. Another pause. Then she laughed. "Just once. What happens now is Blake's done." I waited. She continued. "Boards voted. We're liquidating the entire retreat operation. Selling the land. Splitting the assets. He signed the papers yesterday." Just like that. She chuckled again. "Not just like that. There were tears. Denials. Then threats. And finally, resignation. He's good at talking people into circles. But you cut the power to his microphone." I let that sit for a moment. "Glad I could help." "You did more than help," she said. "You handed him his own echo." That got a small smile out of me. She continued. "Also, I left something for you." I raised an eyebrow. "A journal?" "No," she said. "Something cleaner." A moment later, I got a notification. Email. From a secure server. She spoke before I could ask. "It's the full audio recording of the final group session. My personal file. High quality. Full rights." I blinked. "Why would I want that?" "You'll know when you listen to it." I didn't respond right away. She went on. "I thought about deleting it," she said. "But then I remembered transparency. Isn't that what Blake was always preaching?" "Transparency was his brand," I said. "But he only sold it wholesale. Never used it personally." "Exactly." I nodded slowly. "Anyway," she added, "I wanted you to have it. If nothing else, it's proof. In case anyone ever questions what happened." I paused. "What about Dana?" "She sent a formal letter to the board," Maria said, "begging us not to release anything. Citing privacy. Emotional damage. Trauma, even." "That's rich," I muttered. "She also tried to reach out to me personally. Said she was used. Said she was confused. And I didn't reply. I stared out the window. Chicago traffic slid by in slow, winter-colored streaks. "You planning on running another retreat?" I asked. Maria chuckled. "No," she said. "I'm done with the therapy industrial complex. I'm opening a bookstore." "A bookstore?" "Yeah. Used. Small. Maybe with tea. Maybe a cat." I smiled. "That sounds real." "That's the idea." We paused again. Silence. But not awkward. Clean. "Thanks for the call," I said. "Thanks for the finale." Click. That night, I played the audio. Alone. In my apartment. Lights off. Laptop open. The quality was crisp. The fire crackled in the background. Dana's voice was quiet and shaking. Mine was flat and surgical. Blake's interruptions. Maria's truth. I listened to it all, not for revenge, not for nostalgia, just to remember how it felt to reclaim a moment, to stop performing forgiveness, to stop rehearsing grace, and just speak. At the end of the file, as the fire hissed and the group sat frozen, I heard one more thing. A voice, barely audible. Someone whispered, "Thank God someone said it." I don't know who it was, but I know what they meant. 3 months later, I walked past a bookstore in New Mexico. Window full of used hardcovers. Chalkboard sign that said, "Today's Vibe." Bittersweet with notes of betrayal. Inside, a cat slept on a stack of young books. I stepped in. Maria looked up, didn't say anything, just nodded once. The nod of people who've burned down temples and walked out without ash on their hands. We didn't talk about Dana. We didn't talk about Sedona. We talked about books and endings, and how sometimes the cleanest way to leave is to read aloud what someone else meant to keep buried, and then let the fire do the rest. Subscribe to the channel